Aaron, thank you for joining, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good. So as Trevor said, we're here for USDC 101 for enterprises. No one better than Circle to talk about USDC naturally. But super excited that you're here specifically, Aaron. I know in your role, you specifically get to think about the go-to-market strategy for Circle, as well as kind of like be on the front lines with your team talking to enterprises day in and day out. So Aaron, as a director of the enterprise team at Circle, is really going to give us some perspective here today on specific use cases. So we're going to start a little bit high level, just make sure we're all on the same page of, what is USDC? How does it work? And then we'll start to get into some enterprise use cases from B2B payments to cross-border payments to, peer-to-peer, like Trevor getting paid, me using USDC to do my fantasy football buy-in, to some B2B2C use cases and kind of where you guys are seeing adoption. So really excited about this one. Aaron, why don't we just start? Tell us a little bit about your role at Circle, and then let's get into, what is USDC and just how does it work?
Sure. So, like I said, thanks for having me. It's good to be here. So I sit underneath the platform distribution side of the business. We focus on a number of things, and sort of the way we view the world is, we don't deal directly with consumers. So we work with enterprises and institutions and organizations that are consumer facing, and we work with them to provide them access to USDC, as well as some other kind of, interesting things like Web3 services and wallets. And then we build a ton of infrastructure around that to facilitate the ability to make USDC a useful kind of tool for the way money moves around the world. And so for me, I come from a traditional payments background. I worked for many years on the issuing side, focused on B2B payments. And so it's been exciting. I've been with Circle for a year and a half, and it's been exciting to kind of dig in and to your point, be on the cutting edge and the go-to-market side as this new technology continues to evolve. And so kind of just giving a super basic overview of Circle and USDC. Circle is the issuer and developer of USDC. USDC is a stable coin. It's a dollar-denominated fiat-backed stable coin. So what that means is for every USDC that is in circulation today, it originates from Circle. And the way it works is, our customers will wire in, submit US dollars to us. We then move those US dollars into our reserves. Our reserves are split between actual cash that's held at primarily BNY Mellon, and then cash equivalent, so short duration US Treasury bonds, 3 months or less, that's managed in a Circle Reserve Fund that is managed by BlackRock. And so, we've spent a lot of time and effort to build this really robust, transparent, and safe infrastructure to be able to manage reserves, so that at any given time, that our customers are able to burn, so send us back and essentially request that we destroy that USDC, and then we wire the funds back to that customer. So that's the in and out flow of USDC. Then, like I said, we work a lot on the infrastructure around it. So what's really nice about USDC is that as of today, it's native on 13 blockchains. So it's not only applicable for something like ETH or Solana. It's something that can move across multiple blockchains. And, as we continue to try to build utility around it, we do things like we came out with this cross-chain protocol, cross-chain transfer protocol, so that you're actually able to move seamlessly across multiple chains, and we're continuing to build that out and grow. So we partner very closely with the developer ecosystem to ensure that as use cases start to ramp up and as utility starts to ramp up, that USDC is not only the most safe and stable dollar denominated coin on the market, but that also it has the most utility as any stable coin on the market. So that is USDC in a nutshell.
I love it. Great description, really hitting on the key points. And I think we're not going to get into today, algorithmic stablecoins, different types of stablecoins. But if you have those questions, ping Aaron. I'm sure he'll answer them for you offline. And then, one of the things before we get into some of the use cases, like a couple other topics, I think a lot of folks with blockchain technology, Pat alluded to this kind of the start of the section, are really like, what is that killer app? And Mel talked about some of the ups and downs and the different use cases we've seen. I've seen some people say we're still waiting on that killer app from blockchain. I've seen some people recently say, actually, it's stable coins. Like, it's actually here and it's happening. You guys have obviously had a ton of success. The numbers speak for themselves, the traction. Can you just like give us a little bit of context around some of the statistics and kind of what you guys are seeing in terms of adoption for anybody that has heard about USDC? Maybe they've used it, maybe they haven't, but kind of aren't familiar with really the lay of the land so far.
Sure. And I think it's important to note that I'm sure many people on this call understand where we are as an industry, right? And I caught the tail end of the last presentation, but here we are, right? We're sitting inside of the bear market. It's cold, the crypto winter, whatever you want to call it, right? And so the amount of usage has really started to go down, but it's stabilizing, and you're starting to see that kind of trend outwards. So even today, USDC, we're sitting with $26 billion in circulation, which is incredible. These numbers are a little bit harder to figure out, but there's, we figure close to 2 million individual account holders. We've throughout the history of USDC done over 12 trillion on-chain transactions. And today, USDC is live in over 190 countries. So it really is this kind of borderless internet version of money, and people are really starting to try to hold it and use it and kind of transact with it, and it's super exciting.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to transition some of the B2B use cases. We're going to start on the payment side. And Aaron, one of the things that would help frame some of this, or what are some of the pain points you've seen? I mean, you spent time at American Express. We were talking about, your experience with BIP programs and all these different things, trying to transform payments on the fiat side. What are some of the challenges that you've seen with that, whether it's domestic or cross-border? And then we'll transfer into, some of the opportunities and real life use cases you're seeing on both domestic and cross-border today with USDC.
Yeah. So one of the ways I like to frame this kind of thought is, I've been fortunate recently with this role to spend a lot of time in emerging markets. And, as emerging markets start to kind of make their move into emerging technology, a lot of times they're building from ground zero because they didn't have the same level of infrastructure that some companies like, or countries like the United States and Europe and other parts of the world have had. And so, you have these emerging markets who are building incredible payment systems, like I think of Brazil and Pix and what's happening in India. And you have these really incredible systems. And then you think about the kind of established economies. And what happened is we've built really robust payment infrastructure that is built on old rails, on old systems. And it's so ingrained in our processes that it is incredibly difficult to break away from it, right? And so instead of building new technology, typically what's happened, historically, is we've built these kind of loopholes and pipes and band-aids and little fixes and duct tapes to like try to make an antiquated, not perfect system be able to meet the demands of a changing kind of world with vast improvements of technology in almost every other sector. And so some of that pain looks like it's still really slow to move money. You can show money moving on screen, but that doesn't mean that the money's actually moving at that speed. There's still a lot of need for intermediaries and multiple parties that kind of gum up the system a little bit and slow down and add additional cost. And then, once you get into things like being able to do currency exchange and, moving money globally, that problem gets even worse. And so when I think about kind of some of the problems around traditional payments, it's really based on this idea that we're sort of stuck. That's kind of how I think about traditional payments. We're sort of stuck. We're getting better, but is there potentially a way to either complement those systems in a more meaningful way or create systems that go alongside it that are built on new infrastructure? And I think that's one of the promises of blockchain is it's this new kind of internet native infrastructure that could potentially replace some parts of our traditional financial system.
Yeah, that's a great description. I'll say, we're thinking a lot about B2B payments at Bitwave, and Drew and Pat kind of talked a little bit more on the merchant side this morning, talking about Coinbase Commerce and some of those integrations. More to come from both Bitwave and Coinbase on the B2B AP side. But one of the things that we have to consider with this enterprise lens, as the point of this session, is it's not just technology in a vacuum. This does have to fit into existing processes, existing infrastructure. Some of this we're reforming, like you said there, Aaron. And when we talk to these enterprises, we need to be able to execute something on chain. We need to be able to get that in their ERP, right? We need to be able to have process approvals in place. We need different departments that are thinking about this. So it's not as simple as, a peer-to-peer payment when we think about those enterprise use cases. What have you guys seen at Circle the last few years? Maybe the cross-border side or anything you want to talk about in terms of like where the most interest is, from specific industries or verticals, and some of the challenges and things that you faced.
No, absolutely. So I think when we were still in the bull market and everything was moving forward, there was a ton of interest across multiple kind of sectors and Fortune 500 companies, and everybody, had an innovation team and a blockchain person. We're going to figure this out. This is the time. The time is now for blockchain. FTX and a number of other things happened that kind of put a lot of, doubt in a lot of people's minds. And so some of that has slowed down. So that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges is like trying to maintain interest and keep things moving. But like if you talk to any kind of enthusiast in the blockchain space, this is the time when builders build, right? Like this is when people start to get super excited about new projects and new different things like that. And so quietly you're starting to see some of these potential use cases emerge, and some of them are a little bit louder than others. Like the one that stands out a lot to me is the announcement from SAP, in partnership with Circle, utilizing USDC as this mechanism. They're going to be testing cross-border payments within their ERP system. And so for now it's on the Ethereum test network, and what they're doing is they're for participants who sign up, they'll be able to get access to USDC, and they'll be able to use that USDC on test network to actually be able to pay sample invoices, and they're going to use that for cross-border flow. So they're starting to try to conceptualize what using digital currencies will look like baked into the actual ERP ecosystem. And so that's a really promising sign that when you have one of the largest software companies in the entire world really kind of planting a flag and saying like, this is something that's important to us, and we're going to explore it and we're going to test it. And then, we've had a plethora of conversations with organizations across multiple verticals around things like, managing treasury management, intercompany payments, some B2B payments, international B2B FX. One of the things that came up multiple times when kind of exploring what these potential use cases would look like was the actual transparency of where dollars were at any given time, right? So going back to this idea that traditional payments can be slow, especially when you start to think about cross-border payments, the role of the treasury team within a large global corporation is to understand what their cash position is at any given time. And if you had visibility into where payments were in their life cycle, and you could see instant settlement and money moving and things like that, it would just made it a little bit easier for them to be able to like manage internal treasury. So again, I think we're very early on in that kind of life cycle. It's not a today thing, but you are seeing a lot of testing and a lot of building and a lot of growing, and I do think that eventually that becomes to borrow your phrase, like when you think about stable coins being like the killer application, I do think it lends itself for that use case.
Yeah, super exciting. And obviously cross-border payments, huge industry, right? I mean, depending on the year, I think $160 trillion moved around, and tons of pain, as Trevor talked about earlier, as you and I have seen in our past lives before jumping into crypto. So let's get into some things that I know we can talk about publicly that are in the news. Well, one you talked about adding new chains. I think I saw today you guys added near support, right, for USDC. So you're building every day. But last week I know we saw Oh, and we've got a poll question that popped up. So for anybody that needs to check the poll for CP, pull that up. But last week we saw the announcement around Visa. There were some names like WorldPay from FIS, Checkout, you guys obviously in there. Can you tell us a little bit about Visa and merchant settlement? Because we're talking about disruption, the Centrifuge Maple teams talking about partnering with banks and traditional players. I think this is an example of that kind of crossover partnership. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, the Visa one is super exciting. Merchant settlement has always been something that we have had our eye on here at Circle, and that we have thought would be a really killer use case. Because again, even, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but when you think about the way money has to move, right? Sure, when I go to a store and I swipe a credit card, or if I'm a business and I'm paying with a single use card or something like that, it feels like I'm paying right then and there, but I'm not. There's there's merchants and acquirers and issuers, and there's the payment network, and there's the merchant processor. There's all these different things kind of happening that are slowing down the process. And Visa is very forward thinking, and we've had a great partnership with them for years now. And one of the things that they wanted to work with to your point, WorldPay and some others, was this idea that, well, what if we were able to actually transfer the value using USDC instantaneously? So, managing individual wallets and treasuries, and being able to then take part of that process and move it on chain. And so you're starting to see these explorations and testing and things going live with companies like Visa. And so that's definitely one to keep an eye on. I would there's a ton of information for if you want to dig into like the real specifics around it. Visa's done a great job of kind of there's some animations and visuals to kind of really to show you exactly what that looks like. And when you watch that, you realize how exciting it is.
Yeah, really, really exciting, because I think you'll get Pat excited when he's so fired up at the start of the day. It's just a very practical use case, right? I mean, it's just very, very clearly looking for speed efficiencies, for cost savings efficiencies, for better visibility. It's really kind of that behind the scenes settlement work that may not even impact the consumer on some of the other types of payments use cases we're talking about, but truly just enterprises trying to make their back office functions more efficient. The other aspect here is that it's truly global, right? So Ryan and I actually got to sit down with some of the ecosystem partners on this topic last week in London, and they're working with teams in APAC, and they're working with teams in the US and all over the EMEA region on this kind of stuff. So really exciting. So we've talked a lot about some of these B2B use cases, some of this merchant settlement. I know a lot of the big focus for Circle right now is in that B2B2C realm, and you've been spearheading a lot of this. We'll break this down in a couple of different sections, but can you just talk to us about what you're seeing in terms of driving consumer adoption? I know there's a little bit of an international flair and kind of emerging markets to this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of weeks ago, we announced a partnership with Mercado Libre and Mercado Pago to be able to offer access of USDC to their end customers in Chile. And so that's, the first market that we're looking at. And, we hope to expand that relationship significantly over time. But that is definitely something that we've seen, depending on which market that we're looking at, there is a real demand for being able to have access to dollars. And it's not always easy to get them and to be able to hold them. And so USDC, given that it's backed one-to-one with actual US dollars, gives those end consumers the ability to confidently hold value that represents $1, right? So in the way we view it, is holding USDC is the same as holding a dollar, right? And so examples like that, partnering with Mercado Pago and being able to kind of have this buy, sell, hold product and being able to give access to dollars in emerging markets is a huge use case. And one of the things that really excites me about that specific use case is the potential of what that means in the future, right? So today, you're giving people access to dollars. That's a really strong first step. But I think more and more you're going to start to see, okay, well, now we have access to dollars. What other functionality can we build around that? So what does that look like? Do now, instead of them just being able to buy dollars essentially from a company like Mercado Libre, are other companies or them, particularly able to offer things like deposit and withdrawal? So now you have people being able to get USDC deposited into their wallet or withdrawn from their wallet, so they can get it from a company that they're working with and start and, move it to a different wallet or move it to an exchange and then turn it into local currency. And then, furthermore, things like remittance. So if you're able to actually move value starting in US dollars and having it go down and landing in that wallet as US dollar, and then when they need it, being able to then convert it into local currency and having all of that act on chain. And then even beyond that, to say, given the programmable nature of digital dollars, it's not too far-fetched to imagine a world where in a short period of time, you can start to see payments and merchant payments start to be connected into that ecosystem, right? Where you have a retailer or a consumer app, super app, that is able to show them what the price is in a specific currency, but then they can use USDC as the payment mechanism. And on the other end, that supplier can either accept the USDC or maybe it gets converted immediately into fiat currency in the local currency. So, these early use cases start to let us move towards these bigger kind of visionary use cases where you have the real kind of applicability of USDC in motion, where people are actually using it and that flywheel has kicked in. So that's definitely a huge kind of use case that we're super excited about.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Aaron. I think like probably considering who's on this call, everyone knows Circle a debt of gratitude that you guys are looking to solve some of this cold start problem of how do we get people on ramped, how do we get them into the space, and starting with stable coins, starting with USDC via their existing banking partner, folks like that is a great way to do that. And then once they have those digital assets, then what are they doing with them? And, it actually reminds me of some of what we see on institutional adoption when we're working with traditional financial institutions and custodians that are entering the space, and they want to start with BTC, ETH, USDC, buy, sell, hold. We of course want to talk to them about staking and all these other things, but it's a process, right? It's a process of kind of getting on ramped into the space, seeing the benefits, getting comfortable from an enterprise lens, getting your processes in place. We had a call actually this morning with a Fortune 500 company, and the term they used was building the pipes, getting a comfort and understanding from accounting to tax to their CTO group of really aligning everybody so that you can continue to grow. And I think the same thing applies here on these B2B2C use cases. We're getting short on time, but one more thing I know we wanted to hit, if you're allowed to talk about it, Aaron, publicly, or if you can kind of talk about high level, the loyalty use cases. Like we're seeing that we've been having conversations about loyalty on the NFT side. It sounds like you guys are having some loyalty conversations around USDC with some of these brands as well. Can you just hit on that quickly?
We are. So it's funny because in between the time you and I talked to prepare for this, there was a press release that came out. I don't know if you saw it. So Grab, which is one of the largest kind of super apps in Asia, has announced that they've partnered with Circle to offer Web3 wallets to their consumers. So and it's going to start very much in that kind of digital collectible loyalty space. And that's one of the things that we're super excited about here at Circle is, we want to bring as many people into the Web3 space as possible. And, sometimes that's directly with USDC, and sometimes that's with infrastructure that allows companies to be able to execute their vision around other use cases that are connected to the Web3 space. And that could be loyalty, that could be, just digital collectibles and offering consumers something different and exciting. But what we think that again, it's kind of like, let's follow the transition. Where does that eventually lead? Do those collectibles eventually unlock? And this is not about Grab. This is just, Circle my mind, whatever. Do those, platforms eventually open up things like digital payments, discounted offers, programmable, kind of offers and different things like that. And so super excited that I was able to, that this is today and not yesterday so that we could talk about Grab, because, we think that's a huge deal, and we're going to see, things like that. There are a number of other brands that we're in conversation with, and we think that that's going to be a growing use case.
Amazing. Congratulations. And yeah, glad the timing worked out here. So last question, then we'll do a little wrap up. So those in the audience that, are working at these enterprises, whether crypto native enterprises or traditional companies adopting blockchain technology or financial institutions, if they're, intrigued by USDC, maybe they use it in their personal lives, maybe they haven't. If they're, want to think about different use cases for their own company, like where should they start? What would you encourage them to do?
That's a great question. I think it's we're at the perfect time today, right? Like dust has settled from a lot of things, a lot of the issues that have emerged. The strong companies are still standing and they're building. And now's a really good time to start to think about the future and being a part of it, right? I think that there's this tendency to want to be the fast follower, right? It happens all the time. And then you see companies like Mercado Libre and companies like Grab and all these other companies come and they step forward, or SAP step forward and say, no, we're going to test, we're going to build. It doesn't even necessarily mean that we're going to go put out this fully baked product that's unbelievable. We're going to dive 100% into Web3. We're going to dive 100% into stablecoin payments. It just means we see value in this. We understand that this could potentially impact the way things are done in the future, and we want to be a part of that process. We don't want to just buy some widget or some product like later in the future. We want to be a design build partner, right? And so I would challenge people who are working at large enterprises to think about your customers, think about your internal processes, and think about where you can be a part of making those experiences better, both for those customers as well as for the internal organization that you represent. It seems like a really good time to do that. So whether that's partnering with a blockchain directly, reaching out and talking to somebody like myself at Circle, reaching out and talking to people, the folks at Bitwave like Jim, it's a really good time to kind of dig in and get started.
Love it. Yeah, and I think it applies to, the sexy consumer use cases that everybody wants to talk about, as well as these internal treasury move funds from point A to point B across the world. Another poll question popped up for our CPE folks, and yeah, looks like we're out of time. So, I mean, Aaron, thank you for joining. This is awesome. Like I said, couldn't talk to anybody better about this than you and Circle. I think one of my takeaways is that, Circle obviously is behind USDC, but you guys do a lot more. There's a lot of infrastructure plays with wallet as a service and these things that you're doing for brands like Visa and Grab and all these folks. So thank you for joining. Thank you everybody for being on this session. If you do have any questions, reach out to me, reach out to Aaron. Happy to talk after, of course.
Yes. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.